y'all, it is Nikki. Welcome back to the channel, and if I sound a little quieter than usual, that is because it's almost midnight. Our time currently is 11:08. I actually held off writing because I wanted to try and do a midnight or close to midnight writing sprint. And honestly, I almost talked myself out of it today, so I'm kind of happy with myself, semi-impressed that I actually motivated myself to go for it tonight. It's not a secret that generally nighttime is like my most productive time of day. It's when I get sort of my energy kick for the day. I'm definitely a night owl when it comes to writing and just pretty much anything. But my problem is that I don't always channel that energy I get at the end of the day into something productive. Case in point, over the past fall, when I got sucked into a show, instead of trying to meet my many lofty writing goals. I mean, I had high hopes for finishing full drafts of NaNoWriMo, and it just didn't happen because I got sucked into a show. And so every night when I knew that I should be writing, I was always just tempted to binge a TV show instead, which generally I'm not really into shows, except if they're Disney sitcoms, because those are just the best thing ever. And I totally set myself up for failure because I knew going into a semester that at the end of busy days I would want something to help me unwind, and so I gave myself something that's more tempting than writing, and I was constantly battling that through the entire fall, but I kind of just reached a point where there was no turning back and I needed to just get to the end of the show, which I did. So I told myself when 2022 came around that I didn't want to get sucked into another show for the winter, but then I kind of made it a little easier on myself and said for the month of January. I definitely just wanted like a clean break for that month to be more disciplined about my writing regimen in the evenings, and I've actually managed to do that. So here we are. We have made it through January. It was an experiment of sorts. Let's see how we did. Stats. For one, I have written 19,000 words of part 3. That amounts to a grand total of roughly 52 pages, and within those pages, with a whole lot of inspiration and help from my author and finisher, I have 1, introduced a new character, not a new character to me, but a character who was new in the timeline of the story to my other heroes. I've spent a lot of time in her POV, a lot more than I kind of expected, but I think it's been good to get to know her a little more, and she's changed a lot, so getting familiar with her has been really helpful. I also sort of radically changed another character that has been in multiple drafts from like the grumpy old fart that he was before into an ambitious and intense young character who now poses a potential romantic threat to my hero, so things are getting real. I introduced a new magic system, which kind of just spontaneously appeared, and I was very happy with it. And I wrote a fight scene, which went on way longer than I was expecting it to, and way longer than it has in past drafts, which could be good. I find fight scenes really hard in general because I struggle to know how specific I need to be when I'm writing action. For me personally, when I'm reading a fight scene in a book like The Way of Kings, for example, I don't find that I need to know exactly what lashings Kaladin uses in exactly what order for page upon page upon page. That's just not something that I need. I need to know that it looks awesome, that this character is an absolute boss, and I need to know who wins and the casualties when it's all said and done. That said though, I know that there are probably a lot of readers who don't like it when action just sort of like flies by in a blur and isn't specific, because that can feel like a cop-out, like the author just didn't put the effort in. I'm sure that it's important for a lot of readers to have that sort of specific moment-to-moment detail, which is something that I need to get better at. But I feel like this fight scene was good practice because it wasn't man on man, it was man versus sort of like a horde of creatures, which was good because you don't have to worry about like different fighting styles meeting. It was more just sort of wild slashing and dodging and lots of angry cat noises. I should also say that there are resources for writers when it comes to fight scenes specifically, and one that I discovered a couple years ago at the Realm Makers Writers Conference was a podcast called Fight Right by a woman named Carla Hoke, and she is so talented and just so fun to listen to. I think she has a book, a blog, and a podcast that are all under that name, Fight Right, and I will try to remember to put her links in the description below. She has a lot of expertise about like different fighting styles, but also she mentors writers of speculative fiction specifically in how to write excellent fight scenes in their different contexts. I've listened to a couple episodes already. It's really interesting, and I would like to maybe do a video specifically on fight scenes once I've learned more from her and more from just other books and from writing my own. End of side note. So as a segue into tonight's midnight writing sprint, I should acknowledge that the past 50 or so pages that I've written have all taken place over the course of one night. Actually, it's even more than that. Might be closer to 65, 70? I always end up in this predicament where the action just ends up being so dense and so many events end up packed into this really small amount of time. That has improved over the course of this story's progression. At the beginning, the entire story was crammed into just such a minute amount of time. That has gotten better, but I still end up with these periods where the action is just really dense. Sometimes I don't know if the pacing is off, or if it's just a really eventful period in the story. In this case, that's what I'm inclined to think. I mean, some nights are just really eventful, especially when you're a character trapped in a high-stakes fantasy story. So this one might just be one that my characters need to deal with. Nighttime seems to be like the power hour in my stories, like when the sun goes down, the story goes down. That also creates some problems because I feel like I often forget the practical things about nighttime, like for example, the visibility issue. I often don't take into account how dark it would be in a dense forest in a fantasy world where there is no light pollution, and it can't be a clear moonlit night every single night. That is something to take into account if you're doing a lot of night scenes. Think about what your characters would realistically be able to see. If it is dark, they probably won't be able to see the specific details of each other's expressions or things like eye color, and if you want them to see those things, you need to provide sufficient light for them to see that. Really intense moonlight, really intense starlight, firelight, a light source that maybe only exists in your story. Maybe your characters are a light source unto themselves. Food for thought. Clearly I have a thing about nighttime writing. Just in general, I find night and the moon and the stars, just the night sky, really inspiring. To me, there's just something about it that is so divine. It's like that last part of creation that mankind hasn't ruined yet. It just has God's handwriting all over it, and it inspires me to create. So let's get creating. Enough talk. I feel a writing montage coming on. Thanks so much for watching this vid, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe and share with anyone you think would be interested, and comment below as to whether this writing routine would work for you. Are you a nighttime writer, or are you more of a daylight writer? I'm curious to hear. Of course, as always, do not forget to spend some time in the clouds today, or tonight, or whenever.